I mentioned UC Santa Cruz. That was a crazy university. It had just opened. It was a very good university, but the people were completely insane in the early 70s where I went.
Yeah,
And I can remember because the late, we're speaking about people who just perished, died. Cesar Chavez did.
yeah,
And I talked about him elsewhere. We can talk about him if you wish. But I can remember the first day I went to my dorm room at UC Santa Cruz Cal College. And it was in September, and we had picked the raisins. And when you pick 90% of the crop, people miss some, and then they get very sweet, the remaining bunch or two. So we kids would always go through and get, and these were not table grapes for sale, the big green ones. They were the little yellow ones now. They're very sweet.
yeah.
Same species, but they have not been girdled or had gibberellic acid put on them to pump them up. People forget that those green grapes you buy in the store are not natural. But
Oh, didn't know that.
yeah, the
Yeah.
little yellow ones are, and they
Any
make beautiful.
girdling? Okay.
Yes, and we made raisins. So I bought some that I picked myself, and I brought in the next day. My parents stayed. We bought I don't know what it was, Motel 6. We moved all my stuff in. My twin brother moved in. He was in another college. And then I was straightening it out, and then the next day you could come. So my dad, I think I told you, went with me, went in the shower, and two
Yeah.
people were fornicating in the nude, and he said, "Oh my gosh," and then he leant back against the picture of Jimi Hendrix, and he almost fell through the wall where they'd had a party, and they kicked holes in all the sheetrock, and then they put posters over them. But I went in there, and then he left, and I was all alone, and I had my door open going, and then I had a table you could see, and it had grapes. And I swear, everybody that came by would stick their head in. Are those grapes? I said, yes, they're grapes. What? You're not allowed to have them here. I said, they're mine. Well, who picked them? Are they union? And I said, they're union because I picked them and I own them and I picked them. Well, you're part of the problem then. You're one of the grower insects that are just doing this to Caesar and all the people. I said, no, no, that's in Delano. That's the table grape. This is a family small farm raisin production, not very different. And even the people in Delano, the Jamera family, the Zulums, you name it, all of them were small. They came from the Depression with nothing. They came
Right.
from Italy. They came from Serbia. A lot of them, Zanovich, Pandil, they came from Serbia, Croatia, and they were hardworking families. And, Chavez basically said, well, I'm a nonviolent, Christ-like Gandhi figure, and you're all evil. And that spread to the Kennedys coming out there. But all
Yeah.
these students, and most of them for Los Angeles, they were very wealthy. And I said, have you ever picked grapes in your life? No. Have you ever been to a vineyard? No. Do you think that Cesar Chavez is nonviolent? Yes. I said, he's not. They sabotage driveways with nails. They have sabotaged shipments. When they swarm a field, they use force. They send people down to the border to stop illegal aliens with force. It's high stakes unionization, and it's an utterly corrupt union. And it will not, and then this is before he went to Synanon and you played the game where he was using profanity and force and using the Synanon thugs to enforce his own union. I should have said, and everybody in these small farming communities would talk to workers that were not in the union, and they'd always say, he's a communist. Not that he was. I don't know whether he was or not. He's socialist. But they said, there's things going on in that union you wouldn't believe. And every once in a while, he'd fire. They had a bunch of Anglo, or whatever you want to call them, white college graduate socialists and then he would get rid of them all as
Right.
disloyal. Then he'd go down to Tehachapi in his compound where he's buried today. But my point is that nobody was quite aware of it, but it had permeated that he was doing things that you shouldn't be doing, and there were rumors. And then it comes out 95-year-old Dolores Huerta says that she fathered two children. I think she
Mm.
was married to his brother, too, by Chavez.
Mm.
DNA proved it. And they're in their 60s and didn't even know until recently.
Yeah.
And then she says she was raped forcibly, violently by him in a grape field and then coerced in a hotel room. And then we find out he groomed two daughters of some of his advisors, supporters, and sexually groomed them. They're now um, quite, in their 70s, I suppose, and he was having inappropriate sexual
Yeah.
abuse. I don't want to know what happened, and they were in preteens, 8, 12, and there are others, and he was a serial adulterer. So he had this kind of angelic face. I heard him in the park in Selma. He came in the 60s or 70s. I went and listened to him. First year in high school, I think. And he was a saint. Everybody said he was saintly, but he was doing things that if anybody else had done them, and it was known, the people around him knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And they didn't say a word because they felt that Dolores Welch, they said to her, "Why didn't you tell people he was a rapist? You could have helped." Well, I had to save La Causa. I had to help the union.